The DA, Action SA, COPE and other parties have finally signed the 10-party agreement in Pretoria. While the major metros are led by DA mayors, their mayoral committees are diverse. DA leader John Steenhuisen says they're committed to the functioning of the multi-party coalition. Steenhuisen has stressed that it was never about positions. For more on this, I'm joined by our reporter Govan Whittles. Govan, good afternoon. We heard John Steenhuisen briefly stressing the commitment that they have made to these multi-party coalition, but what have the other parties said about this agreement?
Well, they believe that there is much hope being placed on this coalition agreement and that it could result in a different future for South Africa, particularly in 2024. And this coalition agreement kind of represents a pact by these parties to work together in these councils to have better functioning services, but it also gives you an indication that these are the parties that won't necessarily be fighting each other in the run-up to 2024. And all of them have what they said is a common objective, which is to unseat the ANC in 2024 and create a coalition government. So the signing of this coalition agreement follows the appointment of mayoral committees in the Gauteng metros and also talks between the Democratic Alliance, which has the most votes in this coalition and most seats, and the other parties in different parts of the country where the ANC is in government, where they will try to unseat the ANC once more. John Steenhuisen says the DA is not the leader of this coalition. It's a multi-party coalition, and the votes of every party is important because it would mean that without them, the coalition's leaders would be out of power in the different municipal councils. So they'll try to maintain the level of respect for each other. They've set up a coalition dispute resolution committee, also a management committee. Let's have a look at what John Steenhuisen has to say about the potential of this new coalition, especially leading up to 2024.
I think today is a historic day because I think that today lays the foundation for the next big thing in South African politics, and that's the 2024 election. And I'm very, very pleased that we have, as political parties, been able to find each other around a common set of values and principles. And I think that that is what's distinguished this process from processes that have gone before. That we started with the values and principles and the objectives of what we would like to achieve for the residents in each of those cities, and we worked backwards from there. The last thing that we were discussing were positions. And I think that shows the commitment of every single one of the parties represented here, that our goal is to put the people in the cities that we govern first and foremost and uppermost in our thoughts. For far too long in metropolitan areas around South Africa, the people have been left on the back burner. And it is the politicians who've inserted themselves and pushed themselves to the front of the queue.
No, Govan, clearly a lot of lessons learned from the 2016 disaster. What else did he have to say, or some of the other parties have to say, about ensuring that this agreement lasts for the next 5 years?
Well, they believe that in order for it to last for the next 5 years, there has to be a lot of flexibility and the same willingness to concede, but also fight for positions within the coalition's management committee. And when you look at the number of parties that are in this coalition, it's clear that they're in for some trouble, particularly in Johannesburg, where there's a 10-party coalition. When the mayor announced it, it was pretty clear that it would be the Democratic Alliance, Action SA, the ACDP, and Freedom Front Plus. Now we know that the IFP, COPE, the African Transformation Movement, the African People's Convention, and the United Independence Movement, as well as Al Jamar, are the other parties that will be governing in Johannesburg. And they know that it will be very difficult for them to make it last over that period. They believe the only way to do so is to give concessions when they're needed, particularly in big items such as the IDP plan, the budget plan, but also trying to maintain the relationship between these partners that's based on the signed document to make sure that it could last through the 5 years, and particularly up to 2024, the middle point, when they hope that the opposition parties would have another strong showing in the elections. Let's have a look at what one analyst, Levin Doe, had to say about this, and he commented briefly about the state of the coalition.
We don't know what are the details of the coalition agreement, but what we know is that in a coalition or in an agreement or in any form where different parties have to come together, there should be a compromise because it's a give and take situation. The Democratic Alliance has been quite disparate in ensuring that they run these councils, and they knew that they couldn't run them on their own. They would require other parties. And the compromise also had to come on the part of the Democratic Alliance members or councillors, those that thought that they might get positions in the council. Their positions are now given to other political parties. It will therefore mean that the Democratic Alliance had to sacrifice some of their members in favor of other political parties that are in a coalition. What we need to look very closely is as to whether this coalition agreement is actually going to run for a longer period of time based on what they've actually agreed upon, or as to whether there are clauses that actually put strict regulations on the conduct of members of the coalition.
No, certainly a change in tone from the Democratic Alliance is that they are not leaders of this coalition, but it's purely a multi-party agreement. Thanks for that, Govan. That's eNCA reporter Govan Whittles giving us the latest on that agreement that was signed in Pretoria a bit earlier.